David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have a pen for you from a company which I've had a little experience with, but not a lot. I've previously reviewed a pen from this British company, but even though the company has been around for quite some time, they have yet to make substantial inroads to the US market. The company is Enoto, and the pen I'll be showing you today is their Magna Sequoyah. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of the Magna Sequoyah. I'm going to talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about the pen. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to the good folks at Van Ness Pens, the Arkansas-based retailer, for providing this pen on loan for review. Enoto is a company based out of England. It was founded back in 1905 and produced fountain pens up until 1958. 46 years later, in 2005, the company was revived and had been producing luxury fountain pens ever since. According to the company, the Enoto name, while unusual, doesn't have any special meaning. It was chosen just because it was easy to remember and pronounce in just about any language. The pen arrives in this fairly large box. Inside here, first of all, I always like boxes that kind of flap on the front. It makes it easy to get the box out. We have a very nice wood lacquered box. I believe it's solid wood. It's not a laminate or anything like that. Inside the lid is a certificate of authenticity. This pen is a limited edition of 200. And then inside here, we have a number of things. There is a little information about the warranty. There is a use and care guide. There is a nice little polishing cloth that they include here inside that little pouch. And then something here that I think is kind of cool is I'm always curious as to the meanings behind things like names or logos or hallmarks. And what they've done here is provide a little guide that explains what each of the hallmarks on the pen mean. I'll give you a closer look at them later, but this is some interesting info. At least it is for me. Okay, and then underneath this little felt cover, we have the pen, which is inside of this little felt pouch. Let's go ahead and get it out here. And here we have the Onoto Magna Sequoyah. This pen is made from an acrylic resin and sterling silver trim. The pen's name has a bit of a double meaning. It is named after Sequoyah, who was a Native American who was well known as a polymath of the Cherokee Nation. Now, a polymath is someone whose kind of knowledge spans a substantial number of subjects, kind of a Renaissance man, if you will. But it doesn't need to be a man. You could be a Renaissance woman. I feel the power of knowledge is something that kind of has lost a little bit of importance in today's world. Back in the day, you didn't have the answer to every question at your fingertips. The internet in its current form didn't exist. If you needed an answer to a question or needed to know how to do something, you had to go down to the library and look it up in a book or call up a friend who could help. We all had that friend that just knew a lot of answers and knew basically how to do stuff. People like that had that kind of knowledge were invaluable. And back in the early 1800s, when Sequoyah lived, having a worldly, knowledgeable person around could have a huge impact. And in regard to the double meaning for this name of this pen, the sparkling wood grain acrylic is inspired by the giant sequoia tree. And sequoia is spelled differently. But I do care for this acrylic. It's very pearlescent. There are portions like this here, which are reminiscent of the bark of the sequoia tree. And then there are other areas with what I will call a more solid pearlescence. But it's a nice combination of a reddish brown, black, and a hint of gold. Let's take a look at the top of the cap. I like the Enoto logo. At first glance, it just looks like an N and two O's, but if you look at it in its entirety, you can see that it spells out the name of the company. The outline of the logo being an O, and then there's the N, and then an O, and then the T is what separates the half and lower quadrants, and then the final O. I like creative use of lettering like that. Then there's the sterling silver clip. The clip and band are all one piece. I like the unique pointed design of this clip. It tapers down to a point and then has the company logo above a chevron pattern. The clip isn't overly stiff. On the other Enoto pen I reviewed, it did have a very stiff clip. It's nice to see an improvement on this particular pen, but this clip works well in materials of varying sizes. The cap angles up just slightly until about this point where it straightens out for the remainder of its length. At the end, there are 3 sterling silver bands, with the middle band being slightly wider than the other 2. On the back side of this middle band, it has the aforementioned hallmarks. There is the maker's mark, the sterling mark, finesse mark, assay mark, and the date letter. This particular combination of marks tells me that the silver was tested in London back in 2021. I will say that the marks start off towards the middle of the band, but then as they progress to the right, they each get slightly lower. I know it's a small detail, but I will say that it's something that you really can't see with the naked eye, or at least I couldn't. These marks are very small. I'll give them credit though. The marks are small, but they are very clear and have very good detail. After the band, there is a slightly rounded off, medium-sized step down to the barrel. On the barrel, there are a couple of things. It is engraved with Enoto the pen, with an emphasis on the and made in England. A little further down the barrel, it's also engraved with the number of this pen. Like I previously mentioned, this is a limited edition of 200 units. The barrel straightens out until about an inch from the end. At that point, it tapers down slightly, and the end is flat and has a circular metal inlay. The cap twists off with 3 full rotations. Now, that's on the kind of on the fringe of being a bit too much for me, but I will say that when I've used this pen, it really never felt like it was taking that long to take off the cap. I didn't realize it was 3 rotations until I counted it. The cap on the previous Enoto pen I reviewed took 4 full rotations to remove, so there's been some improvement in that particular category between these pens. Once you've removed the cap, underneath you will find a very sharp looking number 7 18 karat gold nib available in either fine, medium, or broad. I like the touch of having the company name repeating on the edge of the design. It's a bit different than having scroll work or something like that. I do like the two-tone design. I feel it really matches well with the silver trim and the reddish brown of the acrylic. And here's a look at the plastic feed. The section is plastic. It begins with a small ridge and angles up until it transitions to the barrel and then the threads. The threads are set rather far back, so I don't find my grip touching them at all, but being resin threads, you won't find them to be sharp or uncomfortable if your grip should rest on them at all. Overall, this is a fairly light pen. If anything, I wish it had a little bit more heft to it. It is comfortable in the hand, though. The cap does post. It does post securely. Even though the cap is only 1 gram heavier than the remainder of the pen, I find the posted weight distribution to be rather balanced, and I don't feel posting backweights the pen. I actually prefer to use it this way in order to give the pen a little bit more heft. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges, and a converter is provided. With the lack of metal in the interior of this pen and the one-piece barrel construction, with the appropriate amount of silicone grease, you could potentially eyedropper this pen if you should so wish. The Onoto Magna Sequoyah retails at Van Ness Pens for $679. I'll put a link to where you can find it on their site in the notes below. I know that they have sold a number of these pens and are working to get additional inventory. If you're interested in this pen and they happen to be sold out, I'd recommend using the notify me when available feature, and they'll let you know when they have them back in stock. At $679, this is not an inexpensive pen. Would it be nicer if it was about $100 less? Sure. But what you're receiving here is a well-made pen with high-quality parts and high-quality materials, and that it has an 18 karat gold nib, which, as you will see in the writing sample, performs very well. If you're in the market for a pen in this general price range and you're looking to fill out your collection with something that's a bit different than the typical offerings in this price band, then Enoto is something that you might want to check out. The brand offers another model of pen called the Scholar, which retails in the high $200 range. I have a couple of those in my possession, and I'll be reviewing those at a later date. In regard to this pen, now it is time for some measurements size comparisons, and a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Onoto Magna Sequoyah. Just wanted to give you another look at this resin here. I do think that it's really nice, and it does have that Sequoia feel to it. In regard to some size comparisons, this is what it looks like with a Sailor King of Pen Pro Gear Sky. And then here is a Pelican M805. And then here is another Sailor. This is a Sailor King of Pen in Ebonite. Here it is with a Mont Blanc 149. And then here it is with a Parker Dual Fold Centennial Big Red. And then I had mentioned that I had another Enoto pen that I was going to be reviewing here soon, and this is the student model. I actually have two here. There is one in red, and then here is one in green with an interesting texture to it. And that's what it looks like in comparison to the Magna Sequoyah. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, this is what it looks like with the Mont Blanc 149. And then here it is with the Sailor King of Pen Pro Gear Sky. And finally, the Pelican M805. Here we go with the writing sample for the Enoto. And this is the Magna Sequoyah, which is Sequoyah. Sequoyah. And this is a medium 18 karat gold nib. And the ink I'm using today is one of my favorite, which is Diamine Communication Breakdown. This is what the ink looks like. It's a really nice kind of a darker reddish brown with some greenish sheen to it. This is what it looks like in comparison to Private Reserve Vampire Red. And then here it is with Levenger Pomegranate. This is what the 80 milliliter bottles look like. A quick story about this. A couple years ago, I appeared on a video with Peter Draws. You could see that on his channel. It was a really nice video where we I introduced a number of pens to him. He was kind of early in his pen journey. But at one point, I had a pen inked with this ink and mentioned that this particular ink was made for the German market, which it is. It is a British ink, but they had a rock and roll series that was produced for the German market and for a while was only available in the German market and German retailers. And there was a lot of people that commented on that video saying, no, Diamine is an English brand. And yes, I know it's an English brand, but they misheard me when I was saying that it was made for the German market, and they took that to mean it was a German ink. So this is my opportunity, since I didn't feel like going back and correcting a few dozen people on that particular channel that I was right and they were wrong, but I was right and they were wrong. So this is an English ink, but it had a rock and roll series for the German market. Okay, and here we go with the rest of the writing sample. I do find this 18 karat gold nib to be very pleasant. That it's not glassy smooth. There is a hint of feedback to it. You can get a bit of line variation out of there, but I find that the feedback is nice on here. It's just kind of a touch of what I'll call nice feedback. The ink flow is really nice on here. In regard to reverse writing, it's very smooth. And in regard to some fast writing, the feed has no issue in keeping up. So there you have the Onoto Magna Sequoyah. Like I had mentioned before, if you're looking for a pen in this particular price range to fill out your collection with something a little bit different, then this is something you could certainly take a look at. And I'll put a link in the notes below where you can see the Enoto offerings on the Van Ness site. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.